Hey, here's a quick conversation about digital maturity, something that we end up talking a lot about with our enterprise manufacturers. For us, digital maturity is a really important facet of manufacturing or any company to actually understand, because that will then enable you to understand how ready the organization is to make better decisions, higher quality decisions, faster decisions, and be more resilient, and then be able to drive EBITDA, ROA, and a lot of labor efficiency and other things to be able to adjust to the market. So I'm going to give you our perspective on this. Digital maturity for us is the ability for a company to realize value in the bottom line from data and information across the whole organization. Digital transformation is the process of improving that digital maturity and, in the end, being able to transform how the business operates. So, getting a grasp on the digital maturity of your organization is incredibly important. So, let's step back and think about this. A manufacturer is a business, of course, and plant managers, people in corporate, etc., think a lot about labor efficiency, ROA, return on assets, EBITDA, and trying to always figure out what kind of levers can they pull in the organization to be able to drive those outcomes. And data, information, etc., enables them to understand what levers to pull. They'll have some of those levers in an ERP system or maybe a basic machine visibility or analytics tool. But if they don't really haven't really grown to the point where they have access to the information across the whole organization, they have a digital strategy and architecture and enable people to use this information, and that information will actually drive change in the behaviors of the operators, the quality technicians, the maintenance teams, etc., then their success is going to be pretty limited. So if we think about business and manufacturers, constant change, excuse me, the the only constant in business is change. Manufacturers deal with change all the time. A lot of the manufacturers we're dealing with are dealing with the global trade wars and tariffs and how to adjust to those. And of course, we've all gone through the pandemic, and these changes have caused downturns in industries, and has resulted in the companies having to make decisions to reduce their internal capital budgets, or to even go as far as furloughing a whole plant to be able to, at the corporate level, adjust for and absorb those changes in the market. Those are really tough decisions. So I'm not going to say that digital transformation and digital maturity is going to save the day completely and prevent all of those kinds of things. But can it improve the situation significantly? Absolutely. The real question is, what's the capability of a business to be resilient to those changes, to be able to flex with those changes? And what do they need to be resilient and to be flexible? It comes down to speed and quality of decisions made. And where does that come from? Better data and information in systems that are accessible across the organization, connected with analytics immediately available for everybody in the whole organization. So how do we drive this resiliency, this speed and quality of decisions made? We need to think about all of the contributing factors to that. And that then leads us to digital maturity. So what are some of those components of that digital maturity? For us, when we're talking with companies, enterprise organizations, 5 plants, 20 plus plants, 40 plus plants, and more, we're usually going through an assessment process that takes not terribly long, actually, and we have a lot of conversations with people in the plant. We do some scoring on the various attributes that I'm going to get to in a moment, and then we provide very specific and prescriptive recommendations around where they should start, what are the next steps, what are the roadmaps, recommended digital strategy that we try to help them get in place at leadership, define good open architectures that create a good IoT ecosystem for access to the information, select certain technologies that solve specific actual problems, and then kind of put those things in place. And when we're doing that process, going through that whole assessment, we're actually looking at what's the network in the plant, how little or how much of that plant is networked. What's the infrastructure look like? Servers, VMs, containers, their maturity to be able to actually work with those kinds of IT tools. What's the connectivity to the machines, the assets in the plant, the equipment in the plant, as well as the IoT devices for sensors, sensing the environment or whatever else is in there, as well as connectivity to the other systems as well, ERP, MES, SCADA, WMS, LIMS, I've forgotten a few, I'm sure, QMS, etc. What about the platform or the IoT ecosystem? Is there a platform that enables open connectivity, open as a non-proprietary connectivity to all of those systems? Is there a digital strategy in place which provides guardrails for making decisions for not only just the digital tools and the architectures to put in place to make sure that things are open and not proprietary, but also for assets and equipment to buy from vendors to prevent vendors from locking up your data that you should be able to get access to? Where's leadership at in this process for recognizing that there's a challenge and that the company needs to improve, how it needs to improve, and then being able to emotionally, intellectually, and financially support this whole effort? What's the company culture look like around change? Do your teams welcome change or do they resist it? We still have conversations to this day about people on the plant floor that are going to, if not passively resist, almost actively resist change in the plant floor, being able to use data on a small device, a tablet or a dashboard, etc., where those changes are probably going to help improve their life, but they think it's Big Brother, and it's kind of surprising. But how well adjusted is your company to either accept change or at least help those individuals engage in that change? What about the various departments in the manufacturing, operations, quality, engineering, maintenance? How good are they at consuming data from other departments that they work with, processing that data, and then producing data for other parts of the organization to be able to work with? Operational excellence. For me, operational excellence is the lack of chaos in manufacturing without all these fancy digital systems and whatnot. It's possible to run a really good plant by being operationally excellent. Six Sigma, lean, best practices, workflows, documentation, work instructions, all those kinds of things can be done really well even without the digital stuff. But then once you start to add the digital layer, the digital capabilities and the connectivity for data, then your company can do crazy, wonderful things. But does that company already have a tradition and a practice of good, solid operational excellence? Analytics and intelligence, not just the IT. Do we have a cloud data lake and medallion process to get that data into a data warehouse and a data lake? But does your OT team have access to this data? Can they actually generate good edge models of the data at the edge, get that into the IoT ecosystem, be able to define KPIs at the plant level that they understand how they work, as opposed to IT, who may or may not understand some of that stuff? What is their capability around that? And then thinking about the OT teams and the technology teams in the plants, what's their level of maturity around technology? Once you start to put these kinds of networks and some solutions in place, it's not just IT that's going to monitor and support these things. And sometimes it isn't IT at all, but rather it's the OT team. So what's their technical maturity to be able to put these systems in place, to maintain these systems, to extend these systems? There needs to be a team there that has those kind of capabilities for the organization to be digitally mature and then be able to get the speed and quality of decisions. Standards. There should be standards for data communication and architecture, as well as playbooks to be able to set patterns and set scale for the plant as well as the organization. And then, of course, we want to think a little bit about the age of the equipment, the connectivity to the equipment, and also the automation within that equipment as well. These are the primary contributors to a company's digital maturity. And if a company can push some or most or possibly all of these kinds of conditions or attributes of the organization, then they're going to increase their digital maturity, which then improves their capabilities for speed and quality of decisions, which then, as a result, improves the business's resiliency, being able to drive labor efficiencies, ROA, and EBITDA, among other outcomes. If a company can reach this level of digital maturity, that resilience, and get that speed and quality of decisions, then they're doing really well. And this is the kind of work that we're happy to do for your company or your private equity group's assets when you're under a letter of intent or pushing for the acquisition in your first 100 days. Let us know if we can help. Thanks.